Facundo, thank you because we were convened by you. There's lots of expectations. We want to know more about this, and learning from someone who has experience with these devices, someone who uses them routinely, is, in my opinion, the purpose of this meeting. My dear Juan, you know how much we look up to you and to your experience, and you play a water-shedding role. We are interested in listening to you, and your experiences will always be valid and very important for us. So, without any further ado, we all know who you are. Your background is very well known here in Mexico, so I just give you the floor. You know, I believe that we had some logistic issue here. I thought that you would talk about staging and that I had to talk about structure. Well, no, this is something we all know. Staging, we have talked about many times before. My colleagues have a good understanding of the subject. You can ask them to find out. Well, I won't be putting anyone under a test situation. Well, the important part that I would like to hear from you in connection to visual fields, that's very similar to what we are familiar with. And the area of interest right now is what we would have called under Humphrey 24-2 central. That is, I believe, the area of more interest. On the one hand, there's the interesting points for early diagnosis, that is, correlation with the points of OCT is very good, but of course it also helps us save a lot of time. We wanted to hear from you specifically about that situation. When we have a practice with lots of patients where it is necessary to conduct quick and good quality tests, what has your experience been like? Well, I focused my presentation on this. I thought that you would talk about staging and then I would discuss about this. But let's get behind the scenes. We've worked with size for 15 years. I met Professor Van Hauser. You know that I studied with the German people for 6 cold summers because it snows in summer. And I studied with Reihanser and with all of those that developed this. And I also worked at the Hayter University with the people that worked with HRT. That was the tool for optic nerves. Everyone went to OCT then because hospitals started purchasing OCT. We were reluctant to this, but Octopus, after 35 years, Van Housen retired because he turned 90. Hans Bibi, I took the last picture with him 7 years ago. He said, I take a picture with you. And I said, it's the other way around because you have other curves. And he retired as well. And my only contact with the company, with Doha, because we work with lamps, Müller-Wedels, microscopes, was Owens, the Heightstry CEO, and he also went to a different, bigger house that focused on lasers. So the company was left without any guidance. And when we had to expand the OCT, let me explain in 5 minutes why we changed. People said I purchased the first Alex from SLT, and then I changed it for Wattel Medical from France. Everybody told me I was wrong, but you see that 5 years later, Wattel Medical purchased Alex. So, you know, companies merge. That happened between those who do eye scan and eye care. Today, they work really well with microperimetry. And Octopus didn't have good sponsorship. You know, you sent an email and it took them 5 years to get back to you. And life is quicker than that. You just need to download an application and you're a click away from that. The same happened with IO lenses and whatnot. So when I found myself in the need, because we didn't do any more RFG, we had angio OCT, I said, I want to change my eye scan or my eye view for something that will have angiography because of the venous obstructions with diabetic patients without having to inject a dye. When I looked for the Revo, I came across the Optopol. I didn't like the perimeter, and when I saw it working and prompting instructions to patients in Spanish, guiding them during the tests, they know that they have to click a button if they are tired to stop, and it does the driving test and whatnot. I liked it. But when I saw for the first time the development around structure and function, with Heidelberg and with Octopus, we worked a lot on the polar diagram. You would change the HRT, but it never came into the market. Cycle Forum was the first platform that arrived in the market and it brought things together. But you know, there's technical problems behind. They have two different operating systems. You have to extrapolate data, and that would be sent over to size. That was a major issue. And now we come across a technology that is extremely less expensive. You know that, spectral ones are really very expensive, 250,000 USDs. I mean, for a private practice, that's too expensive. You never get the money back. Our first Octopus 2000 costed us $700,000. It never got paid back. This technology brings together structure and function for the first time in a true manner. In 40 seconds, you do the OCT, you do a visual field in 1.40, in 2.10, in 2.30 minutes. It has the Z, the top. There's lots of quick combinations. But the most important thing, what was really amazing, is that since you are connected through a USB drive, your OCT and your touch screen computer has command over the perimetry. So for the first time, we combine perimetry with papilla OCT and also with macular OCT. And as we know, there's lots of American, Canadian, and British researchers, and I have a paper to show you later. They see the glaucoma film, the OCT sees it as a graph of the peripapillar retina. And here we see the film from 2 points of view, from the OCT, the peripapillary fiber layer, and also from the macula, because the macula is very much involved. There's a conference by Lerner that was called Glaucoma, a macular pathology. That is, the macula changes fibers, it loses fibers. And here we have like two cameras watching the same movie. We can bring together the information from the papilla, from the macula, from the visual field 2412, and the macular visual program. And since OCT has the priority to detect the foveal center and the papilla all the time, we are doing some sort of quote-unquote microperimetry. I don't know whether your version is the one under test, but there's big clusters, programs 30 and 24, and so you know what program each information comes from, and this information is perfectly well related to the papillary OCT and the visual field. I would take 1 hour for a perimetry, and now it takes me only 4 minutes. It's amazing. If we go to progression and tracking software, they are infallible. They don't lose any information down the way. And it's the first time that I see anatomy from the papilla, from the macula, and function, full function, and macular function together. on a screen in 4 minutes. When I studied anatomy, I really liked to have everything on one page, anatomical landmarks and things on a poster. We have here everything on the first screen, on the same screen for first time in history. And I should say about Optopol people is that I suggested a few changes. I spoke with Bibi so they would include the curve. She said yes, and we have it ready in only 30 days. And that's an extra detail. But you know, having a grayscale, if I see a grayscale, that gives me a pretty accurate idea of how much is localized, how much is diffused, and how much it is mixed. I spoke with Paolo Brusini from Udine, and he said, you know, I'm only interested in staging, and it's not just OCT, but visual field stages. There's people who are more inclined to one or to other, but having this information on the screen in an automated manner is, in my opinion, something that simplifies our tasks. You know, as the calculations that hematologists had to make mentally. Well, now this information is on the screen, and software upgrades are updated every 30 days. You have an idea and you input this to them and they launch it in the market soon after. I mean, 30 days vis-a-vis 5 years is a major change. You're familiar with these people, so who is the gray matter behind this? Well, if Facundo unmutes his microphone, he can help us, but it is my understanding that those who worked more intensively are the original engineers from OCT, those who migrated. I mean, they won't talk about this in any Congress. You have to talk to the camera to the sides as if in House of Cards, but they are the true engineers, the ones behind this, and they are online. I mean, you can talk to them, you can change the software. I mean, I always say, like 4 months ago, we said that it would be good to have values of the 30-degree perimetry and the macular perimetry on the retina. That's available already. So when there's a hoist sign or a fiber bundle, you know how dBs come down. And then there's the possibility for the point to be focused on this fiber bundle, and this is less than 0.005 error rate because the OCT, such as the Revo, checks where the macula is. Well, that's the key point. So much movement. Yes, that's precisely what it is, because the eye tracker is truly an eye tracker. You have the visual field recorded in high definition, and if you say this point in the visual field, I don't buy into this, I don't see it. Then you go to the moment of the recording and you see whether the patient was blinking and this didn't get detected by the device. Then you can add another point to the test that you are running. That was not possible for us before. So, do you always go back to your videos when in doubt? Well, it happened to us during the pandemic. You know, I have a patient who is 92. She underwent an SLT in 2015. That would be good enough up until 2020, but all of a sudden she has 28 and 45. Her visual field of the left eye is lost. You know, in Argentina, the lockdown was really very long. We had to stay at home for 18 months, and people were kind of afraid of the bogus man, and they didn't want to come out from their houses. You know, she came for the first time after so many years, and there's this lack of behavior of being aware of diseases. So, as I said, she's 92. She's in her full senses. She doesn't see from one eye and very little from the other. And I say her papilla is not that good, but how about the visual field? It is really bad. It's truly bad. I'll show you later. And you know, this can be correlated, or this can be correlated automatically. When you have to do everything mentally, you know, the time it takes. We've all been doing calculations since we graduated, but here it is on the screen. You just check yellow, green, and red, and that's it. Last time a patient came along, she said, I have this visual field that I lost, and my other eye is really bad, and her papilla was 0.3 or 0.4, but she is a perfect pretender because of the fact that she was laid off from the bank. So she would touch wrong where it was okay. So the OCT says this field should be all green. However, it is full of absolute effects, especially on the upper quadrant, simulating an A4 defect. This, for medical insurance, costs a fortune. They say there is no anatomic deficit that correlates to the functional deficit. This is either a happy trigger or pretender. She's a pretender. Values of MDE and in general, are they very parallel to what you already would have in your patients, comparatively speaking, against Humphrey? Well, Humphrey and Octopus used to have a conversion scale that we all use in general. Here we use it less. I work with Optopol people because I really like Octopus print mode. It's cleaner and neater. We all are entitled to choose whether I want to see it as a Humphrey, as an Octopus, or as an Optopol. And they are working on Octopus and Humphrey version to let you know how do I want you to express your visual field. That is very releasing for eye doctors who do not work in big cities, when doctors do not only ask for the visual field but for the brand as well. They can say, I will do that and I'll express it in Humphrey or in Octopus. Grayscale expression from Octopus in colors is really very good. There's some sort of cleanup. The phrase by Fanhauser continues to be well known. Diagnosis at a glance. That is, I have to take a look and I have a very good idea. You know, the grayscale is for the patient, it is not for us. But if you have this on the field, you know, the secretary knows where she's located. And there was this guy from Germany who said the grayscale has no value. And I asked Fanhauser, why is it on the left, on the top left, next to the patient's details? Why is it not on the bottom right? He said, you know, diagnosis at a glance is on the grayscale. Then you decide whether it is this way or that way. And what patients will be interpreting, they don't have the level of knowledge we have. We will tell them their visual field is tubular. We won't explain them the difference between false positives or false negatives or Bevis curves, but we will let them know that this is how their visual fields look like. There's some small conversion. We are trying to millimetrically convert it perfectly well, but ideas is for us to have all three modes, Humphrey, Octopus, and Optopol. That's good. Of course, for those purchasing a piece of equipment, it's a major question to answer. As you duly stated, there's people who have experience with some type of devices, and in the end, this is why I believe it is important for hospitals that are teaching hospitals to teach the different versions. So they have to be familiar with one and other system, and this will help. Of course, in Mexico, you know, how you call it, the octopus visual field meter is not all that common, even though we had one at El Conde. But reality is such that physicians, just like humans, are animals of habit. And you know, residents didn't want to have to take the trouble to interpret with Octopus, and then they started not using this device. That got phased out, having both on the same place. But they were kind of sluggish to go about doing the conversion that you talked about. What you say happens in Argentina. People had a Humphrey, and people said this grayscale is all dotted with squares, and the octopus shows you things in very nice colors. So it depends on the school. If the piece of equipment shows that we can use all three modes, then that is over. We are talking about superior technology, and I say this without a doubt. This is far more affordable technology, at least so. An octopole or an octopus against Humphrey, we talk about less than half. In Argentina, it's at 30%. When I went for laser, they punished me, and when I went for perimeter, they spoke terrible things about me. Well, I believe, and this is important, Facundo and I have talked about it extensively. In Mexico, we have a major problem, which is after sales service, post marketing. Precisely now, we are having an issue. We had, at least in my case, some technology where I am quite confident that technology from Humphrey was really very good. It was actually very good. It showed a before and an after for a couple of decades. Nonetheless, you do have an issue because if the piece of device gets out of order or out of calibration, that's a minor detail, but then you are in big trouble. And in the provinces or in the states of my country, even it is far worse. After sales services, post marketing is really awful. When I talk about companies that do awful things, I talk about size because size, things that could have been easy to solve, foci, you would just go to the repair store or to the spare parts store, you would just purchase one for yourself. That is no longer possible for them because they added a slide and it's unmanageable. You don't do that to friends. This is the example of an industry that is getting obsolete. Well, they want to make money from all over the places. Well, imagine how it is like in South America. We are further away from Miami. Well, we do not have people from Miami coming down south. They charge you as if they were from Miami. Well, when the exhibition took place, and I won't name names because I'm fond of the person, we were at the academy. They had an OCT status that was empty. They had a PC, and engineers had gone to Poland, and it had no content. That I was told by a line deputy manager. That happens a lot. There's lots of perimeters that people pay as if it were Humphrey or Octopus. And people say, is it standardized? And then they have no clue as to whether a perimeter is standardized or not. Perimeters have to be standardized. I went to work for 6 countries, Israel, China, on multifocal lenses for early onset glaucoma. I went to an area where no one has a say. I worked with Hanita and with people from iTrace, aberrometry. And I had to learn aberrometry in 6 months. If you ask people what is aberrometry, they get clueless. So this has to be kind of pre-digested for you. It has to be affordable and semi-automatic. How many of your doctors use gonioscopes or lenses to see the retina? That's difficult. They just ask for OCT. Here at El Conde, it's with each patient. It's the school. It has to be done. We have them do that. But what about the newcomers? I don't know. Well, those that have been trained with glaucoma, they do it all the time because, well, this is a country where they say that there is no closed angle glaucoma. And of course, there's a lot. And we have a school of doing things right with closed angle. Let's go back to size. They sold us an OCT2 while they had launched into the market an OCT3. How about that? You don't do that to friends. You don't do that. Let's go further away. Gerald Sinzer leaving the company. I went to visit them in 1987. Did you know why they recalled HRT from the market, why would they have to sell a piece of equipment that costs 50 if they could sell one that would cost 250? All the data, 28 years worth of HRT, just had to put it away. They killed the small cash cow because they launched a bigger one. And I'm happy with OCT. It's very good. The performance on the macula and papilla, the Revo on the anterior segment is wonderful. Let's not forget, I am sometimes afraid of multifunction devices, but here you have an anterior OCT, the macular OCT, the papilla OCT. You have tables and standards, your keratographer, your biometer, your angiographer, and your retinographer all in one. In other companies, this would cost $1 million. So they've made it affordable. But what I like the most is the function and structure correlation, bringing the macula, the papilla, the structure data, and macular and central visual field information together. And that makes the difference. And in connection to service, well, I was talking to you about this last time. We are very willing and eager to provide services. And when you grow big, that's when you tend to make mistakes. We always have backups for everything, for pieces of equipment. As a matter of fact, Optopol demands from us to have backups to have a quick turnaround on problems. You know, Facundo, we've known you for a long time, and additionally, we like how you master the subject matter and your poise. You know, you have a very personal way about saying things. Like, I would say that you have a good mind in terms of fixing problems. Well, I like what I do. I like it. So, I mean, problems, we can all have problems, and things can go out of order, no matter the brand. But the thing is how you work them out and how willing you are to work them out. And there's lots of companies that have grown so big that they end up making a favor, at least to smaller companies like me. That's definitely the case. That's a reality. But you know, charts, graphs, I don't know whether you've seen that of structure and function, how everything overlaps. The correlation is wonderful. For glaucoma, that's fundamental. It is truly fantastic. I guess I brought a presentation on a number of cases. It's interesting to have a space to talk about this, have all this data together. And I asked people where they will be placing the BV curve, they will show staging. And you know, wherever you say, I want this staging additionally to the other, everything is customizable for the person who is using it. And these people get back to you in 30 days. They are willing to take on changes. You don't have to wait for 5 years. For the first time, I feel heard, having translated the perimeter and all the La Rosa books. We worked with them 25 years. I spent time with them at their house. I worked with the author and his daughter. Now you can send an email, you can have a Zoom session, and you ask them, I want this to be changed. You have a trial, and then in 30 or 60 days, this is up and running. It never happened before. How about your experience, Kurt? In Mexico, we carried out a multi-center trial to send over data to Heidelberg on the size of the papilla of Mexican patients. We sent information worth of 800 eyes that was staged and with all the details. And they said, yes, we will fix it, we will merge it and integrate it. And they never did that. Do you remember the staging in 50 days of the optic nerve? I called it BAS, Buenos Aires Staging System, and that went all over the world. One person said, maybe this is the most elegant and selective classification for HRT, and they were never willing to accept it. They never received it. Well, these people are different. They will be willing to take on this, and we will have information ready in a month's time. Last time, I was told that you had a conversation with them, and they included this piece of advice for the roadmap for the first quarter 2022. In November, who will be testing the version. If we want it, Kurt, we can share it with you so you can run it before it is launched in the market. Would you, Juan, please show him some small presentation on how structure and function look in real life? Because I've shown him the leaflet, the brochure, and your paper, but they've never seen something pro live the way you do it. This is the truth of the matter. How about my screen? Does it show? Yes. Well, I liked it so much that I told Facundo this Revo should be a revolution in glaucoma. And someone said, this is the idea behind the company. So Revo comes from revolution. This is the set in my office. I have the endothelial, the OCT, the visual field, and this with a big plasma screen. This is by Garway and Heath. This is just one, but we have papers from the American school. Flammer did the same in Europe. They've all done their structure and function map. This is not my favorite one. I liked the one by Flamer on clusters. But we know how this extrapolates on a specular image to see what happens on the nerve and on the field. These people basically shows the visual field with the favorite parameters with raw data and with corrected data, the difference between them. And the same has been true on the papilla. They show you the retinal thickness. This goes for the papilla and for the macula. And this is what we do on the visual field, the deviation map. This shows you what there is, and this shows you what is missing. And then these are the OCT parameters with asymmetries on the two fiber layers, the same for the contralateral eye. Here we have a field of 30 to 24, and we have a central field. You can distinguish the dots in each one of them. On the new version, you see these circles with dB values for each zone. The most interesting thing here is that it has lots of variation menus for each one of them. This talks about the cross function. This tells me, according to the papilla and the macula of this patient, I would expect this visual field: red with absolute effects or very deep effects, yellow intermediate effects, and green within the standard area. This talks about the fact that my anatomy predicts this function, and we have to be open-minded. This correlation won't always be perfect. There's people who have protective factors with very affected papilla. This is in young people, and the visual field is always better. They have 50 with IOP, and they do have a field, and the same person being 80 years of age, they have no visual field. So this shows you the data separatedly, and here we can correlate what the OCT expects, and these are the absolute or relative scotomas of the visual field that are moved from here, the total deviation map, and here how on this eye it matches pretty well, and in this eye it would not have been manifested yet. Let me ask a question. In connection to the disk size, how is it that you compare against what we already know from other companies? Well, just like them, I spoke a lot with these people. I told them that they have to introduce the macro disc or the megalopapilla because the circumference area will be bigger, and OCTs will always yield a pathologic result as all others in the market. The device has to be measured, or the doctor has to have a diagnosis presumption. On the slim lamp, it measures more than 3 millimeters, and this is a big disc. They will always have the pathologic OCT. It would be better if the OCT would measure it the way the HRT did. So this is a pseudo exfoliation, more advanced here than the other. Presumption. Looks how perfect this is assumed. The papilla is 0.9. There's no ring, no fiber layers. The macular map, this idea is wonderful. What remains here? The bundle from the papilla to the macula in green. It correlates to the central island on the central vision island, this correlates to paracentral or central defects. These patients have been operated on with a phaco or because they had glaucoma, but this is also a macular disease, and the macula gets involved, and the contralateral eye with the fiber bundles with a higher bundle that is important. This is the scotoma on the field with isolated dots. Here I would improve on the isopters concept, or as Van Hauser said, clusters, to follow the map of fibers and know that if the dots are on the same fiber map, they are interconnected. And with Van Hausers, they would be connected. Here you can see the dots, the scotoma, you do see the damage, and the structure predicts that we will have major damage here, intermediate damage here, and lower damage here. This perfectly well correlates to the superior hotspot here that we have on the disc. The same here. Macular function lines are out of the range on the right eye, but here the OCT expects for us to have it all right. And if we see the visual field values on the predicted values, there's quite a lot of matching. And on eyes, and this is highly discussed by people, they say the equipment says that it should be red, and actually the patient has 3 points, 3 absolute points and an intermediate one. This is the classification of what would be a pre-parametric glaucoma. Here we have the papillary damage. Here there is problem on the lower fibers. Nonetheless, this patient, who we know should have a condition on the higher field, it is less. The damage is on the papilla. It is not yet expressed on the visual field, but the forecast or the projection moving forward is that anatomically the patient will have this damage on the visual field. So from the medical point of view, there's always some minimal mismatch between when this damage which will actually happen. The fact that it is on the papilla, it doesn't mean it is yet on the field. And this is the concept of pre-perimetrical, with so many extra fibers so that the papilla doesn't get damaged. Another example, asymmetric on the other side. When there is macular damage and a problem on the central vision, this is detected by the device. They say, I would expect a very small central island. There is damage paracentrally and centrally, and the patient has 8/10. They don't reach 10/10. We sometimes are worried with the macular OCT, but the macula is undamaged. It has no edema, but the glaucoma, of course, affects the central vision, and this is a disease that affects the central vision, the central eyesight of patients. The same thing here in another case with major damage. You see the macula, the papilla, there's no macular remains here. The 2 lines are very low. There is little symmetry. But again, this is a field with a lot of damage, and this field shows pseudo-exfoliation. The field is smaller, and there will remain some factors that we will have to account for in the clinical setting. They sent us over patients as IOP hypertensive, 24, 25, having the papilla, you see 03, 04, 05, and you say there is some symmetry that corresponds to that of the pressure. And my OCT says, I expect a normal field, but here I expect some defect. And that symmetry is not 3 points, but a few that start to express. This patient had a peripheral hypoplasia of the iris stroma. You see the vessels of the iris. This is late congenital glaucoma of the young adult. He's 45, and he starts seeing this. We see goniodegenesis, pressure, the papilla, and the field, and then we say we're in presence of glaucoma, because if I see goniodegenesis, pressure, papillary damage, and perimetric damage, even though the two visual fields from 1 year ago are okay, I have to take it that I am in front of a glaucoma. If I assume it later, I won't be making the necessary assumptions. To conclude, three simple cases. This is a patient that underwent OCLT 5 years ago. The curve was 30, 35 in the morning, and we treated him. We standardized the curve with low values. His values are below the threshold. Let's take a look at the fiber layers. But the OCT says there's some damage, and we are finding superior fibers on both eyes. This confirms that this patient had 30 IOP in the morning. We normalized it with the OCLT, but he's having pre-parametric glaucoma for the time being. But at some point, he will start expressing the first few points on the visual field being 42. So this is very useful, and time won't allow me to talk about progression today, but in this type of device, it is very important to follow progression, not just from the papilla, but from the macula. When we have a pre-parametric patient, we don't have to wait until the visual field changes, but to focus on the papilla and the macula and follow up on them closely. This lady, she was classified as hypermetropic. You know, when you combine the macula and the papilla, you see retinography just next to it to see the image and see the papilla. We say it is pretty excavated. The papilla has damage on the field. It does have damage on the fiber layer, and it is already excavated. This patient was operated on, but had 38 to 40 millimeters of mercury. It doesn't look glaucoma. If you give it time, it will have an effect on the visual field. And the last one, this is the most deceiving disease. You know, these angular closures. She is a 24-year-old patient, 40 millimeters with four drugs, 500 mg of acetazolamide. She underwent iridioplasty. She had organic closure, 360 degrees, all four quadrants, positive signs, and this visual field. And I said, you are sitting on top of a time bomb because you see 20/20 with your +6 corrected, but you will go blind on both eyes. Her optic nerve is good because the angular closure glaucoma is a different entity. The OCT says this is a trap because it's an angular closure glaucoma. She has 40 with everything. She underwent a phaco because we needed to render her metropized, and I didn't use a valve, but she underwent thermolysis. And 2 years later, she keeps up the visual field pressure from 10 to 12 with this difficult to handle glaucoma. She doesn't wear glasses. She uses +250 for close eyesight, for close vision. But, well, it's worth remembering that this is angular closure. She would evolve suddenly, and this will show us a surprise. But this shows us that when everything seemed normal, she already had a damage on her optic nerve and the visual field. These are very nice cases. I see that even the way that you present these cases, well, you take an image or you take one way to graph things out. Other times you choose another method. This speaks of how versatile you are and all the varieties you can pick from. And this is worth a million. Do you do your own stuff or does someone do it for you? Well, when the case is complex, I do it myself. But my secretary, my sister-in-law, is in charge of all the tests. She studied with Optopol, with the representatives in Argentina, and she's got trained, and she does it better than myself. But we always have a 50-inch plasma. This has HDMI connection. I have the lamp and everything, and we like to show everything on the screen and to show the patient and tell them this is what I've seen. I told the lady I was just talking about before, your papilla is 09, and a few years ago it was 03, and The left eye won't see much and the right eye will see less. We have to make them aware of their disease. Well, dot black is what you've seen, and all that in red, you saw it as well. So a test that takes 4 minutes. Never before did we make an OCT and a visual field test in only 4 minutes. Now this is available to us. Generally, when you save time, you lose some sensitivity. Ain't that right? What has been your experience so far in connection to that? I'll be very honest. In the pandemic, fellows had to go back home. Argentina doesn't allow us to have fellows. Is that right? No. Here, people are not yet immunized. We had 2 doctors, and now we have less than 50% of staff. We haven't reached herd immunity. So for a few months now, it's been myself and my secretary. So we devote from 30 to 60 minutes to each of the patients because we don't want them to travel. We know that people won't get infected when they are operated on, but rather when they have to travel. So this is why micropols, we don't want them to have so many controls and to maximize our efforts. I mean, commuting and traveling kills you. We did that a lot initially in our pandemic. You know, our pandemic is now a little bit more controlled, but it isn't over yet, as you know. It's a long story. Well, I believe that I should say that I loved a few of your last few correlations of nervous fiber layers and with visual fields. They look wonderful. How about the audience? Do we have any doubts or questions on your part? Well, please turn on your cameras and microphones so we can meet. Please, guys, this is your golden opportunity. Please, you have in front of you this person. I see that Nati is around. Well, that's good. Natalia is one of the ladies who knows the most about OCT from her own generation. Well, she was a person who made lots of changes. She really knows a lot. We named her Natty Hood. I'd like to say that I was lucky to have met Van Hauser, not Goldman because he died before. My father was his follower, but I did meet Van Hauser, Danheim in Hamburg, and Hans Bibi shortly. I didn't study with him, but I did meet him. Did you meet Graham? Yes. I studied congenital and pseudo exfoliation for 2 years. He would always speak in such a low voice. If fellows would speak in a loud voice, he would just walk away. And people said, did you want to go back to your country? From Spanish-speaking people, I learned from 2 people, from you and from Della Rose. And the Italian I like a lot is Brusini. I learned a lot from Paolo. Those curves are wonderful, and these are curves that speak of an understanding. They speak of correlation, and that is worth a lot. So nowadays, people have not considered it that relevant. And I believe that there are schools, the European school and the American school. The American school doesn't attribute to this so much relevance or importance. And sometimes you come to realize that you can do quality work and that it won't be all that big and loud. Felipe, I see that you are around. Do you have a question? Your microphone is off. I was just paying attention to your class. I have some experience with the device, and it's been great. to be able to correlate. Do you have both? Yes, I have the visual field device and the OCT. For how long? About 4 months. So it's not that long. As a user who is getting familiar with this, which are the things that in your case, such as in Juan's case, you would have liked to have found slightly differently? In connection to the device? Yes, let's be candid. We are meeting amongst friends. Well, these are just very few things. Did you find any part of it difficult, meaning getting adjusted to a new system such as this one? Well, it's very user-friendly. It is very automated, and it is really very quick. And it's a matter of having the patient sit on a chair and then to a next chair, and it's a matter of the visual field, and it's pretty quick. So once you are done with the OCT, it could go directly to the visual field, but it's really very quick. I was seeing on the graph of fiber layers, I saw lots of undulations, and I wonder whether it is very sensitive to the lacrimal film. I believe that this OCT is very sensitive because of the scans to the fiber layers. It does detect things that cannot be that easily seen. The eye tracking modulates almost everything. The lacrimal film is fundamental. We didn't take it into consideration in the visual field, and today this is a high-order aberrometer. If there's no good lacrimal film, the data will be wrong. We have oculus keratograph, and the laser that I do most is LPL. And now we are receiving the third generation, and the number of people with glaucoma, well, that's a subject matter for another discussion, but you are lucky in Mexico to have preservative-free. Do you use lubricants before all the tests? Systematically, except for keratography to diagnose dry eyes. Yes, in Mexico, the eye is so dry that you might have lots of errors, especially in OCTs, that are due to this. And the visual field, let alone, it will yield far more errors. Well, as Felipe said, the device is very user-friendly. After 30 years of Optopol and Heidelberg, well, I changed and imagined the calls from the international house. They lost the sale of lots of perimeters. We went to easier and better, and structure and function is no longer a myth. This is done. It's not a promise anymore, and we can improve it. And there's people working around the world for this to be true. So this can only get better. I would never analyze things separately anymore. I did see in your case very many cases of macro discs and macro and micro discs. That's interesting. Fernanda, did you have any question? Facundo told us that one of the advantages of this visual field system is that Humphrey prior systems can be uploaded to the system to see the progression. How useful is that? I mean, do you tell the difference, even though this comes from two different devices from two different brands? Did you see it in practice that you can measure progression? Yes, and I'll say more. You first had to upload them, then purchase them or compare them and introduce them to the statistics. You have Humphrey. I have 35 years with Octopus, which results in 250,000 visual fields from many patients who are alive. So we are working to upload this and to stage it and to see the progression. And we are also doing this for Optopol so that the two files follow the same path. Brands didn't want this to be done. Octopus or Humphrey don't want this. Facundo won't say it. I'm not saying it either, but the change has been so major with this technology that we are working for the two to be perfectly loaded. We have past good examples of 18 years outcome and evolutions that can be continued with the company. One of them is easier than the other, but how long does it take you to upload those tests? In El Conde, we get to see 100 patients a day, so that kind of worries me. You will have to go to work. Well, just send over the hard drive to Optopol so they do it for you. Whatever you have, send it over to Optopol so you get started from that point. They do have the USB. That can make it easy. We will have to pay for the transition. The price of transition has always been paid from HRT to OCT, and among the different stratus, the first ones would not migrate to the next ones. We lost a lot of information. One didn't work with number two, two didn't work with number three. I stayed for longer with HRT because I had 18 years worth of information, but you will always lose some sort of information in the middle. That's the price you will have to pay. We went through several devices, Juan, you and I, and we know that these devices are pretty rugged. They are pretty rugged. But the part that will always be damaged first is not actually the device, but the printing part of it. So it so happens that the generation of printers is so quick to change that in one generation, that is in 5 years' time, you no longer have the right printers. Well, that is over here, right? These devices work via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. In the past, you would have to see which HP printer was compatible, and there were no 30 you could choose from. They were only 4. It was impossible here. I started in 1987 doing visual fields with an Octopus 2000. The discs were this size, and it would take me 1 hour. And of course, your legs would go tanned with the heating. People were mesmerized that it would only take 1 hour. This is where we came from. The octopus was 2 meters in diameter. Did you see that? The 2000. It arrived in 1987 to Argentina. We had to bring offices together because it couldn't be disassembled. Well, that's another different thing. You are in front of a new technology, and it will be difficult for people to change, but I am really happy with what I've done. I have, well, I have no interest with Facundo except for my love for going fishing in Miami, and we sometimes share barbecues, but there is no other common interest. We have no shared commercial interest, none at all, never. Well, to both of you, I'd like to thank you so much for this possibility you've given us, for us to speak in a very candid, colloquial way. We spoke about the things that those who are managing these technologies are interested in listening. How about the residents here? You are very silent, guys, today. What is going on? Nati, how about you? I see that you are around. Nati, I'm sure that you have a question. So I will let you think about this question for some time. And in the meantime, let me ask if there's any other question around. Well, I do have a doubt. We are used to the classification of Parison that we do on our system. But when it comes to changing to this new technology, printing this as if it were Humphrey's version, you can print it as a Humphrey. Did you say that? So I can use the same criteria. Well, it's the same global indexes. I like Baigusini because I studied with him and I also know the others. I know Kurt likes a different one, the by Hodop, but I said it's not that easy to learn. But let's see things differently. You will automatically classify the classification of Hoda Pipari. How about that? It would be a fundamental tool for the doctor if it were staged. Well, it can be done, and it is not difficult. Among those that worked at El Conde, there is a physician who teaches lots of classes on HODAP, and he goes thoroughly point by point. I'm not such a purist. I'm a little bit more eclectic and less stiff because, such as you say, from the grayscale you can already see how things are going, but you use that to locate yourself. Numbers are something you assign importance to, but when you do research efforts, of course, it is correct to say there's so many points of such significance. It's a cluster with over 3, so on and so forth. So this type of effort can be done, but if you have the median and the deviation, then you are done. Yes, we followed the same rates and indexes for the last 30 years. Facu, I would take note of two things. We will be uploading Brucinis, and they can do so with HODAP. And the brand would welcome the two stagings. It should be customizable on the printing mode, and you may say, I want it Humphrey with the HODAP classification or Octopus mode with Brucini's classification, or that all might appear on the menu. It's very simple to do from a systems perspective. It is not difficult at all. Well, put it into writing, please, if you will. I got lost, in the middle of it. From the moment you said hello. Well, these are different approaches. If you send me the contact of people who are interested in this, we can tell them. I can give you the data, and this would be the only perimeter that allows you to print in 3 different formats, having different stages, and you may say, I want a BV curve, I want color, or I don't want color, and then more people who are used to other perimeters, they will be willing to change, to go for this change more openly. Facundo, you know that we do the customizing depending on the physician who prescribes the test. In the private setting, there's physicians who indicate a given way of doing things, and then that will be really helpful. And this offers 3 more ways to go about printing your results. And well, they are very open to suggestions. They are quite permeable. That's good in them. They are open. They might even be dangerous because you give them ideas, and in 2 weeks' time, they have worked things out. And of course, it doesn't take them 5 years, and that's so rewarding. Well, I'll get back to them. This is the nice stuff. When we think about this type of things, well, we engage in this type of brainstormings, and there's always possibilities for the future. Each question generates another question, and that's how things go. So this has been a very nice experience. We are really willing to get started with the whole thing, with all of it. And these are points that are very important for us when making decisions. Well, of course, during the week, I will get back to you, doctor, because this escapes my scope. But I asked for the PTS 2000 as a demo, and I hope that it will get sent this week. It took them a few days, so maybe next week they will be sending it to you. But as I told you last time, we can send over the other piece of equipment in the meantime, or else in 10, 12 days, you should have it available. But we can take it right away. Fernanda, what do you have to say about that? You can get started. It is in my warehouse. We will dispatch these and the OCT, and it will be up and running in your glaucoma department. I will be sending this with the same configuration that Juan is using, exactly the same one. That sounds excellent. As regards myself, I'll meet you soon in Mexico, but that will be via webinar because we will be discussing in a few weeks with the Glaucoma Association organized by Antonio Paxa et al. So we'll meet there. I won't be there on those dates. I will send a lecture, but I won't be there because I'll be on vacations. My first vacations in a long time. Well, I will stay home and I will send my lecture as well. Fernando, did you have a doubt? Yes, good evening, and thank you so much for this lecture. In connection to patients, will have this unity in the hospital. How about patients with prior tests? Is follow-up and transition from one device to another one, is it possible without any problems? Or do we have a few things to consider because they will change? Well, it's a matter of having the Humphrey test available on a USB drive to then migrate it to the new system. Will you provide us counseling and advice? Yes, Reina, the optometrist, will be visiting you. She will be spending a few mornings for a week, for an entire week. That's great. Okay, so thank you so much. I would like to thank everybody's time. Juan, it's always wonderful to have you around. It is my pleasure. You are a very open and candid person in what you practice, and we just love it. I'm sure we will be repeating this information, this communication in the future. Thank you so much. Facundo, thank you so much. Thank you all. You are the teacher, Kurt. Thank you so much. Thank you all and have a good evening. Thank you.